Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Vintage Books Live. We are excited tonight to have contributors to The Claw Machine, an anthology of speculative and dark fiction. And if anybody in the are in the panel, I totally forgot to mention this ahead of time. If anybody in the panel happens to have their copy with them, I will have you hold it up because I am at home and don't have a copy with me.
Yep.
But we got our copies in the store today too, so I'm very excited. Yeah, it's a super cool cover. And I'm just going to start the conversation with Elizabeth Mitchell. Elizabeth is the editor of The Claw Machine, and whenever I see an anthology, particularly one like this that has such a unique and interesting premise, I'm always interested in where did the initial idea come from? Like, where on earth did you get the idea to have an anthology that is basically the theme being the claw machines that we see in the grocery store every time we go out the door and that all the kids beg their parents to let them do?
Well, I can't claim that it's mine per se. So my sister came to me with an idea for a horror movie. Was real messed up, and she was like, "Write this for me." And I have written horror movies, and I was a special effects makeup artist for 6 years, but I'm not doing that right now. So I was like, "Well, we can put a pin in that, but probably not." It kind of sat with me though, because the idea was basically people being taken out of claw machines. And I was like, ooh, I kind of like claw machines. I didn't really think about them in dark fiction. And suddenly all of these ideas were popping up. And I was actually having tea with Valerie. And I told her that I had all these ideas and I didn't know if I wanted to do a short story collection or something. And by the end of us having tea, she was like, "Oh, I think I also have a thought, maybe." And that was literally like, "Okay, well, then maybe I will see what other people think." And so I asked a couple people, and it was literally, "Oh my God, I don't know what I do, but this is amazing. This is a challenge. Oh, I love claw machines, the nostalgia of it all." And so it just, everyone, it hit a sweet spot, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's such an interesting idea. And it, like, the instant that you start thinking about it, it's like, oh, this could be like creepy really easily. So, so it totally makes sense to me, but that initial, like, you're thinking cute little claw machines and, stuffed animals, and I'm like, oh, but wait. So when you are editing, um, what's for people who haven't been in the writing world, maybe aren't writers or writer friends or whatever, when there's an anthology where you're going to be taking submissions from other people and figuring out, what you want to do, what does the process of that look like? I mean, I know there's like thoughts about the financial part of it and how are we actually going to publish this thing and all of that, but I'm thinking more of the creative process of what, you now you have your initial idea. How do you go about making it into something that is a finished product from a creative perspective?
That's yeah. So this time I sought people out, and I just said, "Hey, let's talk claw machines," and they'd be like, "Oh, well, here's an idea I am noodling about in the last 5 seconds," and I'm like, "Yeah, write me that if you want, I guess. I'll send you a proper email of what I want." And then I realized I didn't actually know what I wanted, so I had to like outline, not just like, "Oh yeah, interesting claw machine stories." It was, "Oh, it needs to be targeted, and I can't have like extreme sci-fi because that wouldn't necessarily go with, more traditional real world things." And, "Oh, I didn't think about this. And how long should stories be? Okay, well, what do I like to read and other people that I know?" And so it was kind of collaborative though, because a lot of these people have also been in a lot of anthologies. So it was easy to just kind of say, hey, like, what is your average length story? And they would tell me, I usually write shorter things. And I'm like, okay, well, then I guess the shortest length is whatever you write today. And I just, in this particular case, I really wanted everyone to kind of just shine with their voices
Yeah.
because I I don't like squashing voices. I choose according to the voice. And the next one I do, I'm going to be doing submissions and I'm going to be looking at it the same way, which is just I want the interesting voice and whatever length, as long as it's vaguely in the range and it's vaguely in the theme, I'm probably going to be
Yeah.
happy with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like we might have lost somebody, so I'll keep an eye for someone else to show up in the waiting room so I don't miss anybody. But while we're oh yeah, you're back. I was like, oh no, we lost someone. So excuse me. You actually already wow. Sorry about that. You actually also have a piece in the the uh the anthology. Did that happen like at the beginning? Or
So
did you
actually, yeah,
like
but
wait?
also no. I had to wait. I had to wait. So I wrote two and I had an idea for four. So I wrote two, but I couldn't decide which one it was until I had the whole collection because I even decided that if my piece wasn't up to par, then it wasn't going to get in because the caliber of these stories is just, I almost, as someone had to convince me to put it in because I was questioning if it was good enough. So I just had to defer to someone else. I was like, these are the two stories. You tell me which one. I don't know. Or should I write something different? Here are my other ideas. I'm freaking out. Because at that point I just wanted to see where I fit because I had created an arc and it was like where could my story potentially fall, and if it didn't fit then it didn't fit, but luckily there was a perfect little spot for it. Though I did do some tweaking, I'll admit it was a little bit darker, but I would have had the darkest story and that would have been a really dramatic thing, so I went in and I cut probably 1,000 words of darkness and was like, okay, now it fits with the collection, okay.
I am muted, so nobody has to hear me coughing. Um, when is that kind of when I'm trying to think of how to say this. Like, how does it work slash feel when you finally have everybody's pieces and you're trying to create? Because you said you created an arc, and obviously that doesn't happen until you have all the pieces in front of you. I'm curious what that is like because it's like it's such an interesting collaborative process because you're creating this thing, but unlike when we write all the pieces ourselves and we kind of know what's going to happen, an anthology isn't like that. Like you never gonna quite know how it's all going to come together. I'm just curious what that's like.
Magic. It was just it was watching puzzle pieces fall together because I would get a piece and it was so good, but it was like compared to the last piece, it would almost be sickly sweet. And I'm like, oh no, I want them both, so I'm keeping them both, but also okay, maybe I'll write the in-between piece of this. Maybe I'll be the connector. But then somebody would bring me a piece and I'd be like, oh, it's shaping itself. Like
Yeah.
I knew that I knew it would. Like the me before that said, these are the voices and these are the stories. That me knew this would happen. But the me as I'm getting stories did not
Yeah.
believe in that. The
Yeah.
me was like, okay, so do I have to write 12 stories because they're all so different and I love that and I can't have anyone not do exactly what they're doing. But they all went above and beyond. And actually, I think it was JB that said, I was having a chat with him, and he said that the reason that he thought that everyone was like he appreciated how long I gave them to write, and he said that he thinks that the reason a lot of them were taking that entire time to get it to me is because they were all going, "Oh, that person's amazing. How can I make sure my story sounds nothing like it?" Because like your first instinct can't be the story you write because it's probably the first instinct of someone else. So it was I mean there was no hive mind in these collection in
Yeah.
this collection,
Yeah.
which was wild because I mean, I expected that I would have to space out the hive mind a little, but
Yeah,
they
yeah,
took the months and they unhive minded it if it had started that way. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I'm actually gonna jump over to, is it Angelique the correct pronunciation? Sorry, I caught you off guard there.
Yes, sorry, my screen was.
That's totally fine. If you would
Yes,
just
it
in
is.
if you would just introduce yourself, and I'd like to take it from the editorial point of view to like the individual contributor point of view.
Sure.
So you get this prompt.
Hmm.
What is your process for thinking about, what's your initial thoughts? Do you keep those initial thoughts or do you say, okay, well, I want to do something much different? And then once you've like introduced yourself and answered that, because I'm gonna ask that same question for each person, I would love for you to read if you would like. We'll just kind of have the conversation in the readings and we'll just kind of flow from one to the other. So
Sure, yeah. So I'm Angelique O'Rourke, to introduce myself, and I'm one of the authors in this anthology. Yeah. So in terms of the initial thoughts that I had, and did I keep those? I really did. I felt like when Elizabeth initially talked to me about um, the concept. Sorry, my cat has a lot of thoughts and feelings. I don't know if you guys can hear him. Um, uh, I sort of had at least like an atmosphere and a mood that came to me right away. So I didn't necessarily have a full, cohesive like characters and plot and whatnot that sort of materialized, but it did really something came to mind in terms of like images, atmosphere, mood, and I knew that I really wanted to speak to that and try to capture that. So yeah, I would say that that initial idea actually I kind of was a guidepost.
yeah, yeah. Pets are always welcome. So if they really want to be stars on screen, they are most welcome to be so. Mine's actually usually in here yelling at me, but she's asleep right now. So.
Yeah, I think he heard me talking and was like, "What are we doing?" And then just like sees it's me.
I'm gonna be a part of it today too. And yeah, if you just want to go ahead and read the passage that you or whichever piece you were going to read, that would be lovely.
Yeah. My story is called Alternate, and I was going to just read an excerpt from that. Oh my gosh, Bobby, Haley says, with a level of familiarity that is really outsized to the situation, given that he'd only been our acquaintance. How are you? It's been forever. Bob, still handsome, but now in a more mature, rough around the edges, blue collar way, looked up from his phone. His sardonic smile, ever at the ready, spread slowly across his face. Well, Haley and Kelsey, as I live and breathe. I've been great, as evidenced by working the door at a fairground. How about yourselves? I genuinely laugh, pleasantly surprised, remembering that he's always had that droll, self deprecating sense of humor. Oh, I'm also crushing it, I begin. Just started my tenure back in town, sleeping in the living room of my mom's one-bedroom apartment to help out while she gets chemotherapy. Expecting my Pulitzer nom any day now, though. He holds my gaze for just a little longer than is necessary as he chuckles. Haley laughs lightly as well, but it's the groupthink laughter of a person on the outskirts of a conversation she doesn't understand. She hands Bob a $100 bill and asks for 2 day passes and a bunch of individual tickets for rides, food, and beer. I don't move my hand to reach for my wallet, and she doesn't even glance in my direction to indicate she thought I would. Bob waves away the money and puts the day pass bracelets on our wrists. He rolls off a stack of those pull apart little orange raffle type paper tickets and hands them to her. Don't worry about it, he says. Haley sets the bill on the counter by the tablet and says, just keep it then, for old time's sake. Text me when you're off work. We can meet you back here and have some drinks. She writes her number on one of the nearby sticky notes. Bob raises his eyebrows a little in confusion, but replies, okay, sounds good. See you guys later tonight then. I'm off around 8. As we walk away from the ticket booth, I ask her why she did that. I mean, I've deduced that $100 is borderline meaningless to her, and she can see that Bob could really use it. But why are we suddenly hanging out and getting drinks with him? Um, because I've always kind of had a crush on him and he definitely can still get it, she laughs. I don't remember that at all from high school and wonder if she'd never told me for some reason. But it seems way too in the weeds to ask, so I just honestly agree that Bobby can definitely still get it. It's a crisp autumn evening, and we're both wearing boots that crunch the gravel into the dust under our feet, adding to the cacophony all around us. So, what do you want to do first? Haley asks, gamely making conversation. She's really trying. It makes me feel like someone is pulling on a cord that's been lassoed around my heart and stomach. I scan our surroundings. Games, food carts, rickety rides that strike me as taking your life in your hands if you got on one. And under the biggest top tent, a small circus that did a few performances a night. Shooting the cans down? My hand-eye coordination is still for shit, but maybe you can win me a prize. A few hours go by. We do stupid shit like you do at a fair. And between the beer and the cotton candy, it's getting easier to interact like we used to. I look at her face, and I remember when she got a terrible pixie cut sophomore year, and then suddenly swept with the urge to hug her, which I suppress. Why hadn't we seen each other in so long? We take a moment to sit on a wooden bench and finish the last of our drinks. The sun just dips under the horizon. The air is lavender and electric in the last fleeting light. A breeze that's colder than I expect moves through my hair. Across from us is a booth that, at first, looks completely empty until I see what it contains in one abandoned corner. Hey, I suggest. Let's do the claw machine. All right.
You're gonna leave us hanging.
I am.
No. Just as a reminder, everyone, we have copies of the book at the store. You can come get it tomorrow. Mark, I was gonna jump over to you next.
Yeah.
You get the prompt for the anthology. What is your sort of first reaction, and how much of that first reaction makes it into what you ended up with?
Um, I will come clean and admit that my first reaction was totally and horribly incorrect. And I wrote 7,000 words of it, and it was still terribly and horribly incorrect. And so I grumbled and wandered off and kicked a garbage can once or twice and thought about it for a while and came back and came up with something else. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
delighted that Elizabeth was patient with me and while I sorted out what was a much better idea. So yeah.
And if you, and I'm sorry, I didn't ask you to introduce yourself. But Mark is also Mark was involved, and I think a couple of other people who were here too were involved in our conversation in February, I think it
Back
was,
in February.
about
Yep.
the even cozier cosmic horror anthology, which we also still have those in the store too, and they're great. So you can come and get all of them. I am on a mission at the store to get people to read anthologies because I love them, because they introduce me to, I can find authors that way sometimes. Like you can, it's almost like a little sampler, and you go through and you get all these different voices and people. And if you really like some of them, you can go out and find out what else they've written. And I've, find new favorite writers that way. But I don't think everybody always thinks of it that way, and so I'm always trying to get people to read more anthologies, and it's like smorgasbord. So, and so yeah, Mark, if you've got your passage that you want to read, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So this is so my story revolves around a claw machine that is deposited at a corporate center, and the people who work there discover that it's not quite as fun as it should be, or maybe it's more fun than it should be. It's hard to say. But we're going to skip to midweek and see what happens when Errol, the guy who empties the garbage can, discovers the claw machine. Due to the nature of the subcontract with the original service company, Errol, whose employment with the third or fourth, frankly, removed service was strictly week to week, cash in hand every Friday, when Errol does his rounds between 2 and 3 in the morning, which he doesn't mind really. He can listen to whatever he wants to on his portable Bluetooth speaker. He doesn't have to talk to anyone. And when he has to clean up some dude's mess in one of the executive toilets, he can say all the things he's not been saying out loud for weeks and no one will hear him. And so, yeah, this morning is one of those mornings because someone stabbed themselves with a fountain pen or cut themselves with a paper cutter. He's not sure how. That machine has like 18 safety guards on it, but somehow someone did something because there's a fuck ton of blood crusted paper towels shoved in the trash can in the men's room. And as he's wheeling his cart towards the elevator, still a little bit unnerved about the mess in the bathroom, he hears a weird melody. It's almost like that sample in that song he's been grooving to all week, the one about snatching and grabbing. And anyway, he hears this riff, and it's definitely out of place in an office environment like this. And curious, he wanders over to the break room where he finds the machine. It's all lit up, the lights are twinkling and sparkling, and there's a message on the little display pad on the front. It says, "Milestone achieved. Free play." Errol looks around. There's no one there, just him. He looks up at the camera in the corner of the break room. He's pretty sure the security dude is napping. It is after 3 a.m. He'd be napping if he had that dude's job, frankly. Errol nudges the stick on the machine. The claw shudders and jiggles. He grabs the stick, moves it, and when the claw is positioned, he drops the button, or he presses the button. The machine dings, the claw drops, the tines close around an ovoid shape. The claw lifts, the tines strain, and the cardboard shape doesn't come free. Errol shrugs. So much for that. Like every other chance he's had over the years, yeah, sure, you can play, but he never really wins, does he? The display blinks, but the words don't change. Errol stares at the display. He's thinking too hard about this, surely, but fuck it, why not? He maneuvers the claw again. Sure, he should try for something easier, something like that box in the corner, which is resting right on top, but no. And this is the thing that his girlfriend Shanice says about him all the time. Once he's made up his mind about something, there's no changing it. Just like he did when he had that offer to work at that sports ball arena, but he didn't like the vibe the recruiter was giving him. Or that time, well, anyway, Errol goes for the egg again. He has a better angle this time, and the tines hold for a few seconds. But again, not long enough to get the egg over to the chute. The machine makes a slightly sad noise, and Errol gives it the finger, as if that will make things better. And in response, the display changes. $20. Payroll deduction available. Errol laughs. Yeah, right. Payroll deduction, my ass. He does, however, have a couple 20s in his wallet. One time, he tells himself as he feeds a bill into the slot. A few seconds later, okay, 2 times. And he gets it on the 3rd time. And when he opens it, he finds a watch. And not just any watch, but what looks like a really fancy watch. Now, Errol's not a watch guy, but Shanice, well, fancy things make Shanice happy. And when Shanice is happy, Errol is happy. And so he slips the watch into his pocket thinking, this is going to be a really nice surprise. However, Shanice, who, yes, certainly does love fancy things and is always up for the good kind of surprises, knows there's no way in hell a man like Errol, who empties the trash cans at the big corporate offices and who gets paid in cash on a weekly basis, can afford a Rolex Cosmograph. Clearly, he's stealing shit from those corporate high rises, and she doesn't want to be a party to any of that sort of nonsense. And so, after oohing and eyeing and promising to give him the best blowjob in his life later, she ghosts him as soon as he goes to bed at 8 in the morning, which has been one of the dumbest things she's ever had to put up with in this relationship. God knows why she's bothered for those last 6 months. She keeps the watch, however. She's not a fool, and it is, after all, a Rolex Cosmograph. And that is Wednesday.
I guess I'm the one that's going to buy my coffee tomorrow because all of you are leaving us hanging. Okay. So I am, let's see. I'm gonna just go to if you want to kind of raise your hand and see who wants to go first because everybody's jumping around. Um so is this would anybody like to go next? Yay, Catherine. Hi. I lost you again.
Thank you. Yeah, apologies. I'm gonna have to duck out early and I'm bummed to miss
Oh,
all the readings, but yeah, just
I
putting my hand
actually
up for that.
I'm really glad you said that because I was gonna say because we've got so many people, this could go a little later than 8. And so if anybody else needs to duck out or you're on East Coast time and it's hecka late there, I am totally happy to like have people raise their hands and say, "Hey, I need to go," so that I can and if you need to leave early or whatever, that's totally fine. So thank you for saying that because I was going to say that at the beginning. Do you want to introduce yourself and just share a little bit about, how what you were thinking about the prompt and that kind of thing, and then go ahead and read from your selection.
Oh, sure, thank you. And by the way, stick around if you can. Like I'm bummed I have to leave early. But anyways, you're in for a treat with these. I'm Catherine Quevedo, and I was on vacation with my family in San Francisco when I got the invitation to this anthology, and I got so excited. We were eating tacos at a restaurant, and it just made the evening so lovely. The whole walk back to the hotel, my mind was whirling with ideas and we were taking a lot of public transportation. I think that may have factored in. So it just felt like such an exciting opportunity. One of the niches that I write in is actually poetry about retro video games. So the idea of taking my fiction and having an arcade setting was very appealing to me. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from my story, which is called Narrowly, Narrowly Caught. Zaya jingled her cup of tokens. They'd each been given a bunch. To the clock corner? That sounded good to Mallory. Her mom called those machines rigged, a waste of time and money, a ripoff. Well, she'd prove her wrong. They took a hard right to the section where you could earn prizes directly instead of accumulating tickets to redeem later. Yeah, her mom would hate this section. Sandwiched between two other claw machines, one with rubber duckies and the other with chalky fruit candies, lay a cabinet she'd never seen before, labeled UB for me. It glistened and hummed with temptation as Mallory approached. The other vending games revealed their prizes too easily in mounds of molded plastic or rainbow wrappers piled up like tiny landfills. But the UB for me's tinted red eggs lay waiting in graceful billows, like suds begging to be popped. Just let the gangly metal claw get close enough. You couldn't see through them, and that made her want to snag one more than ever, like squishing one of those cherry tomatoes, only this one held something good inside. Mallory inserted a coin, and the claw machine activated its countdown, while Exposé's point of no return played in the background. As she maneuvered the joystick, she did her best to block out Zaya's frantic instructions from over her shoulder, guiding her toward the easiest eggs. Mallory wanted to really test this out. She aimed for a tougher to reach egg, recited this full rhyme in her head, and closed her eyes at the pivotal moment. If you watch when the claw makes a tight silver fist, narrowly, narrowly missed. If when the claw closes, you snap your eyes shut, narrowly, narrowly caught. Sure enough, she snagged the prize on her first try. It tumbled safely into the chute while little prize bells dinged and red lights blinked across the top. The egg weighed next to nothing as she pulled it from the machine. The oval dome may as well have been a glass cloche protecting a rare artifact as she opened it. What'd you get? Zaya asked. Is that a sticker? Mallory pinched the prize between thumb and forefinger. I think it's a temporary tattoo. I'm gonna leave you there.
I love the tomato thing. That thing you just said about that. No, that is like the best. That is so awesome. I heard that and I was like, that's exactly cherry tomatoes. They're beautiful, but you bite into them and you don't get what you think. But this time, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I like may have to go into work an hour early tomorrow now because like everybody's leaving me hanging. Does anybody else need to go a little bit earlier than later if they need to be somewhere or go to bed? Okay. Yeah, Marianne and JB, if Marianne, you want to go next, and then we'll do JB after that.
I'm going to stay till the end, but I'm on East Coast time, and I think that a couple of my friends who are watching, are on East Coast time.
Ah,
So
gotcha.
it just might be, and I'll be fading by the end, but I'm going to stay for all the readings. So I don't
Well,
mind going.
I know we have a few. I mean, we've got some people watching live over on YouTube, and so yes, many of them may need to go to bed soon.
Mona, you're saying you're on East Coast time too? You're sleepy.
Yeah, it's a problem. Somebody needs to invent something so we can all be on the same time zone all the time. And yeah, I don't know. So yeah, Marianne, I'd love to hear your take on it when you first got the prompt and then a part of your story.
When I first got the prompt, I had no ideas at all. It just seemed like the craziest thing. And I said yes because it seemed crazy, but I really had nothing. I think I let it stew for a couple of days. And at the point when I decided that the claw machine was a person, that the claw machine would be my main character, then I really got intrigued in the story. I also spent a lot of time trying to remember claw machines in my past. And then wound up thinking a lot about my parents and about we used to go to Nantasket Beach with my Greek aunts, things like that. So a lot of those kinds of things started filtering into the story. So I set it sort of in a Greek restaurant near the beach with a sentient claw machine, which is how that happened. So um, but it was fun. And I have my prompt book, like where I start stories. And I
Hmm.
realized I started the story exactly with the part I'm going to read, was more like the setting, because that's what was like this whole sense of the way it smelled and just like this, anyway, the setting and then the claw machine and then the character. So, so should I read if I can find it?
Yes, please.
Here it is. Lucky Dragon. A nighttime breeze drifted through the back door of Strabo's beachside cafe. After midnight, the air freshened, bringing the smell of ocean, seaweed, and aging wood. Tonight, the air was laced with ganja and tobacco as staff from nearby venues lingered in the parking lot. Lou flared her nostrils, curious about the smoke habits of humans, but kept her claws still, both her hidden claw and the one hanging down over her hoard. Manny Petrakis, Strabo's short order cook, arrived to clean her plexiglass, holding a rag in one hand, a spray bottle in the other, and a cigarette tucked behind his ear. She wondered if he would go outside to smoke soon. Strabo's was a hole in the wall eatery holding only 10 tables. Lou's lair, an antique claw machine about the size of a phone booth, stood at the back between two vintage pinball games. On the claw machine's sign, a red dragon spread bat-like wings over a hoard of eggs. Manny finished polishing Lou's nest, the plastic case where she brooded like a hen, and had been brooding for 20 years. He tucked the rag into his belt and made the sign of the cross. Then he touched the tips of his fingers, callous and tanned like oak, against the plexiglass casing. He leaned closer and whispered, "Lou, I need your help. I told you about my daughter already, but sometimes I just stumble. I don't know how to be a father." The red light of Lou's dragon sign reflected in a mirror across the room. Years ago, somebody, probably Strabo himself, had taped a handwritten notice, quarters only, over the name Lucky Dragon. Now only Lou remained. Those who knew her, who believed in her, called her Lou. Those who didn't were just simply gambling, and she let them make their own luck. The world changes so fast, Manny continued. I thought I could be a good provider like my father. Back in the day, that was supposed to be enough. Now I'm struggling. In the kitchen, Alba Morales, Strabo's general manager, sang along with the radio as she tallied the tips and receipts. Most of the staff talked to Lou at quiet moments, but never acknowledged those talks to one another, except for calling her by name. If Alba came out of the kitchen, Manny would pretend to start polishing again. All I ask, Manny bowed his head, and Lou's hidden claw, the one tucked against her chest, twitched. All I ask, he repeated, is that I keep my heart open. This is why they come to me, to ask themselves a question, Lou thought. Nothing in Lou's hoard of eggs held an open heart. only heart-shaped charms, a plush Valentine, and buried towards the back a purple bear with a pink chest. Lou touched Manny's thoughts, where she often heard the language of his childhood. She guessed his wish was poetic and not anatomical. Manny took 4 quarters and put them in the slot. He once told Lou that in human church he would light a candle and leave an offering for the saints. Here he offered coins to a captive dragon. Putting his hand lightly on the joystick, he let Lou control the mechanism. Lou engaged a motor and shifted through the pile of plastic eggs and translucent capsules, past the trinkets and toys to a prize she'd created last week, one night after closing time, as she'd brooded about Manny and his daughter. That night, Manny had confessed to Lou that his adult daughter was gay, and not only gay, she'd proposed marriage to her girlfriend, and they even talked about opening a business together. And even more, she had asked Manny if he would walk her down the aisle. First, I wondered what would my father say and my uncles. Lou had twitched a visible claw and let her engine engage in a low rumble. Manny said, "No need to growl. You're right, and I'm an idiot. What do I care what those old guys think? I wanted to be happy, to be loved, but still I stumbled. I hesitated, and she felt me hesitate." That's it. Okay.
Thank you. Let's see. Everybody jumped around here. JB, if you want to go next, I know that you were later as well.
Yeah, I don't live on the East Coast. I just work East Coast hours.
I gotcha. Same thing.
My days start awfully early. But I'm happy to talk about it for a second, with the question that you've been asking. But Buffy sort of pitched me on this, and I think I might have gotten a glimpse into some of the early brainstorming sessions at Willamette Writers Conference last year. Shout out to that great conference. If anybody's not going, you should. We were having lunch, and Elizabeth pitched it, and I think what I liked most about it was that it's kind of impossible. The claw machine is such a perfect thing because it's sort of impossible for everybody to not have some sort of personal relationship with this device, this toy. Even if you only played it once, like it's such a unique thing that it's shown up in all of our lives and in some way or another. I can think of like a dozen different times that it's been a part of my own story and journey. So I was most excited for her to have this idea because I just like, yes, everybody's going to have something very interesting and crunchy to dig into on this one. This is my story. It's called Cursed Things. And it's about a salesman. First, Chad Adler sold himself. At 2 minutes old, he charmed a birthing suite full of nurses with a kind of cooing smile that no one his age ought to be capable of. Each commented on how talented the child was, how special, how he was most certainly one to watch. Yes, Chad was just warming up. As a toddler, he studied the art of selling among adults as if it were a mobile of stars. Our dollars for your groceries, my handshake for your trust. You give me this, I give you that. No matter where he went, people were always selling something. He wanted to better understand. In kindergarten, Chad attempted his first sale. He gave his lunch to another child in exchange for the girl's Barbie doll. It worked. Chad tried again the next day for a pop-up copy of Three Little Pigs. It worked a second time. In fact, it worked so often that Chad's mother finally called the administration to ask why their preschool found it acceptable to give children toys at lunch instead of food. Chad didn't want the toys. He simply marveled at the process of taking them away from others. He placed each in a row on his bedroom floor and puzzled over how they once belonged to someone else. Now he could do whatever he wanted with them. At the age of 9, Chad made $600 selling concentrate lemonade on the corner of his street. At 14, he doubled that in magazine subscriptions. And at 18 years old, Chad set a local record for most Christmas trees sold on Christmas. Not for Christmas, on Christmas. 40 trees bound for the landfill, redirected into the living rooms of men and women who, upon second thought, agreed with the young salesman logic. Something about second chances and holding the holiday magic close. No one could really remember a week later when the tree sat on their curb. Chad began to wonder if there was anything he couldn't sell. The idea took root like a gnarled red finger pushed deep into his brain, poking at this matter. So, the day after high school graduation, Chad strolled into a used car dealership and sold himself all over again. I'm not hiring salesmen, said a bulldog shaped man with a manager name tag. Give me until 5 o'clock to show you what I can do. No. 4 o'clock. Out. The worst vehicle on your lot, Chat finally said. Sold by 4 o'clock, or you'll never see me again. That raised the manager's eyebrow. He glanced at the clock. He'd already bought what Chad was selling. The man just didn't know it yet. At exactly 5 p.m. that afternoon, Chad walked off the lot with his new hire paperwork and $200 in commission from the sale of a 1989 Chevy Corsica with 150 miles on it, 150,000 miles on it, no back window. The thing about selling was any asshole could do it. Chad just had a knack for it. No, that wasn't exactly right. Knack didn't quite excuse Chad's singular interest in the activity. It was closer to a craving. Chad woke up each morning with a painful and ringing desire to approach someone he had never met before. He had to convince them life could be better. They had to know that Chad possessed the thing that could make it so. He often struggled to walk down the street because the pang in his gut was so powerful that he grew lightheaded and wouldn't stop until he sold something. He yearned to make deals that favored his station, ones that advanced him forward in life, even if in a menial way. Really, he had to sell something so that the hunger couldn't take hold of him. It wasn't long before he was car salesman of the month, but it was even less time before the shine of that achievement wore off. Not for the first time, Chad found himself unsatisfied. Magazines and lemonade had paid his allowance easily enough, but Chad hoped his sales commissions at the dealership would bring in the kind of money that finally calmed the feeling in his stomach, but it didn't. Chad needed to sell something more valuable if he was going to scratch this itch. And because my cat is getting really loud, I'm going to pause here and you can pick up a copy.
These are all, I mean, every single one of them, I'm just like, dang, now I have to go read that one too. I love I think what I always love too about anthologies, particularly, and well, most anthologies have this, but particularly with those with a specific kind of theme, is that everybody approaches it so utterly differently. Like you think that, well, I was like Elizabeth said earlier that, what were they going to get? Like a bunch of stories that were similar, and then they just generally. I'm kind of curious now from other anthology, people who are editing anthologies, if they have the same experience of worrying that it's going to be too much alike, and then it just isn't because everybody has such amazing imaginations. Simone, do you want to go next?
Once I poke all the buttons on my
That's
computer.
okay.
Yeah.
Half the time I forget to unmute. And were you,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, were you in Even Cozy or Cosmic too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was like, I know there are a couple different people that were here that were in there. So yeah, I'm curious then, and I apologize if there was somebody else that was also in it that I didn't also ask this of them, but I'm curious, is it, what's the process that you think of if you contribute to anthologies? And I suspect that more than one of you like do this, where you're contributing to anthologies more than just once. I'm curious, what do you have a way of thinking about stuff that you kind of do if you get invitations to do more than one anthology? Or is it just kind of a brand new experience every time, and every time you get a different kind of a prompt? Because this one is more specific than the Cozy Cosmic is kind of horror that's cozy, which I learned
True.
in February that it actually could be, and I love it. But the claw machine is a much more specific sort of thing to form around, and is there like a general way that you start when you're approaching something, even regardless of how general or specific it is, or is each time a really unique experience?
Well, the experience of actually writing the story, of course, is unique, and involves different depth of emotion, and you're approaching an audience as well as a prompt in a way. So, you think about what is the cozy horror audience what wavelengths are they on, and that sort of thing, and that affects me as a writer while I'm writing. Um, but for me, the thing that's the same every time is that the more specific I can make the prompt to myself, the more of the structure of a story that I can build around that. So to the claw machine, I just added elements that were important to me as I thought about it, and then those elements actually had the story come together around them. Um, so I find the more specific the prompt is, the more quickly my brain gets all contrarian and says, but what if it was a claw machine except something
Yeah.
else?
Yeah.
And I feel like from the ones we're hearing, other people do that too. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so that's where I come from. Yeah.
And then if you had anything else you wanted to add, that's great. And then also if you want to read us your passage, that would be lovely.
Yeah, no, I think I'm kind of ready to go, so
All right.
well, we'll let it stay there. Um, yeah, doubling down on anybody interested in Willamette writers. There's interesting stuff there for readers too, a writers fair that goes on with lots of independent published books and stuff. So it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
So there's my push,
Your pitch.
my pitch. My story is Ocean Wonderlands, and I'm actually going to read right from the beginning because it quickly ramps into things that sort of give the story away. And I would love to invite you into the story and then let you go. All right. Ocean Wonderlands. Emmeline wrung blue water out of her sponge, the remains of some kid's magic marker enhancements to the pirate mural at the back of Ocean Wonderlands. As manager, she should have assigned someone from the morning shift to do it, Willa or Rudy, but she liked a little detail work. It got her to the quieter back half of the arcade, which suited her after her breakfast of arguing with her daughter. There would be plenty of bathroom stall muckouts and multi-candy barf cleanups to deal with later. Besides, Em felt a little possessive of the mural and its swashbuckling captain. Over 20 years, she'd been seeing him, summer in and summer out, and she still had her child self's fondness for him and his crew and the mermaid princesses that they wooed. The good pirate captain had been repainted twice already this season, and Em, who also did the books for the arcade one evening a week, understood that the owners couldn't afford another redo until next year. She looked over her work. The captain's trouser area was now too clean, maybe. That kind of clean that had probably drawn the attention of the penis Picasso in the first place. It would be better if she got the whole wall clean, but with the repairman for the overly generous claw machine coming in an hour, she wouldn't be able to do it herself, not the careful way that she wanted. The captain's feather-plumed hat had lost its gilding, and a lot of the finer details were fading this time round. Em patted his arm. Sorry, Captain. I've got to leave you to the mercies of my crew. When Emmeline was a child, Ocean Wonderland's arcade had seemed wonderful in fact, and not just in name. Family vacations had been a treat, and child Emmeline, always so withdrawn during the school year, could make a new best friend for 2 weeks every summer. Promise you'll write. She and this companion could change $1 from collecting cans into a couple of skee-ball games, or a 2-gun round of Zombie Blast, or an ice cream bar to share from the freezer. The mermaids and pirates filled their dreams with fantastic adventures. They would spend hours staring into the lit glass cases of the highest ticket treasures, blown glass sailing ships and Swarovski crystal animals and stuffed parrots with real feathers, planning what they would pick if their wishes came true. Wonderlands was full of magic, clanking, shining, siren wailing, sticky-fingered, ice-cold, sweet on tongues, popsicle blue. Wonderlands was also the last place Em had been before her mother died and took Em's childhood with her. And that's where I'll leave it.
Thank you. Ah, now I want to know what the claw machine does in that one. This is just, yeah, I'm going to have a hard time not just going straight to the book and saying, "Excuse me, I can't work today. I have to read all these stories." All right, I am going to jump over to Curtis. Hi, Curtis.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you are
sorry to,
outside. That is lovely.
yeah, sorry, my battery's running down.
Oh,
Alright.
no, you're totally fine. If you, we probably should get you in here if your battery's running
Yeah,
down,
I think
just
I'll
in
be
case.
okay for a few minutes, but I wanted to make sure I didn't
So,
drop out entirely.
so yeah, if you want to just talk a little bit about what your reaction to the prompt was and how you approached it, and then read a little bit from your passage.
Yeah, sure. So I think when I first got the call, I felt like I was a little busy, so I politely declined. I didn't think I would have time to do it. But then later on, I got re-invited, I think. Sorry, a lot's been happening this year, so
Yeah.
um, I do remember it was like later in the process, and I was like, oh, actually, now that I've like been thinking about it, I do kind of have an idea, and so I'm happy I had the opportunity to contribute something, and um, yeah, and I did appreciate that it was sort of a broad theme. When I talked to Elizabeth, she's like, "Yeah, it can be anything you want as long as it's like vaguely speculative or dark. It should be in the real world, nothing too science fictiony. But as long as it's got a claw machine in it, you can include it any way you like. And for comparison, a few years ago I was invited to a different anthology, um, which was a media tie-in for the Aliens versus Predators universe, and that was like a very specific thing. It's like it's not Aliens, it's not Predator, it's like it's Aliens versus Predators. And like there were specific things that they wanted, and it's like I went like 3 or 4 rounds of edits, and then the studio people had to get involved and say, oh, like well, this isn't really what would happen, and like nobody fucking knows what we're making shit up, right? Like, come on. So, but that was an interesting process, and so I do appreciate sort of having the freedom here. It's like, yeah, it's a claw machine, and my claw machine does not appear in the first part of the story that I'm going to read here, but I assure you, it is a crucial plot element later on.
You have to wait and find out.
Yeah. So I'm just going to dive in. The title of this is Never on a Monday. Katie knew she wasn't going to like the new girl as soon as they met. It was a Tuesday, and New Girl was wearing an Amy Mann t-shirt sporting the slogan, Voices Carry. So on the nose. Not only that, but New Girl had the audacity to actually walk up to Katie at the start of lunch period, put out her hand like she was in a fucking business meeting, and introduce herself without even making eye contact first. What the shit? Hi, I'm Eva. I'm new here. New Girl was actually smiling, with teeth. How dare? No shit, Katie muttered, still avoiding eye contact. New Girl's smile barely dimmed. No shit to me being new here or my name being Eva. Do I look like an Eva? I've never thought of that name as having a look before, but oh my god, stop talking. Katie turned and fixed New Girl with the same deadly glare, that had withered many a freshman over the last 2 years of high school. Katie had been looking forward to a mostly harassment-free senior year now that she'd found a place and locked in her respected loner status. Didn't New Girl know the rules? Why are you talking to me? New Girl shrugged, still clearly oblivious to everything. Was this bitch from another planet or something? I saw you sitting all alone here under the tree and just thought you might like some company. Also, like I said, I'm new here. It's actually my first day. I'm trying to meet people. Katie actively zoned out while New Girl droned on. True, Katie was sitting all by herself under the big oak tree in front of the school, but that was because she preferred being by herself and nobody else had the cojones to wander that far out to the edge of school property during lunchtime. Principal Seth Millen had expelled students for less, but he knew that Katie's mom would litigate his ass raw if he tried anything like that with Mrs. Cow's precious honor student. So much for being Catholic, right? New Girl's laugh, perhaps better described as a cackle, brought Katie back to the annoying here and now. Anyway, I didn't catch your name. I didn't throw it. Katie responded reflexively, then clenched her jaw while kicking herself mentally. Rookie mistake. Joking around implies that you want to continue the conversation. What the fuck, Katie? You want me to guess? New Girl said. I'm good at guessing. What do you give me if I guess right? Maybe this would be a quick and easy way to shut her down. Nothing. I don't want you to guess. You're no fun, but you can't stop me. I'm gonna guess anyway. New Girl lifted a finger to tap her lips, black nail polish so millennial, and then pointed the finger at Katie. Rude. I'm gonna guess that your name is Katie. Katie's heart slammed against her ribcage. What? Yeah, Katie, spelled C-A-D-Y, and not like Lindsay Lohan's character in Mean Girls, but like the astronaut Dr. Coleman. New Girl's smile suddenly seemed sinister. Did I get it right? Okay, cool trick, bro. You got me. Katie put a hand behind her against the tree and pushed herself up until her full height 5'10" frame towered over New Girl's dinky 5'4" at most. You been spying on me, bitch? No, Katie. New Girl wasn't blinking. Shit, had she blinked at all during this conversation? Wouldn't Katie have noticed that? I don't want anything from you, but you might want something from me later. And then she turned and walked away before Katie could think of a clever retort. I'll stop there. Thank you.
I can't even believe how like each person's story just goes in such a different direction. And yet there is this thing that ties them all together. It's just crazy. I've got people over on the YouTube chat who are like commenting about, uh, there was one comment of the prayer to the claw machine dragon, having always been nervous about claw machines, but that changing their perspective, and commented on JB's opening, and then also on the overly generous claw machine comment was also great. So yeah, it's really fun to see everybody's approaches to it and how I don't know. That's I think the thing that's just such a joy about anthologies is that the sort of breadth of human creativity, like how everybody can come at this one topic and have such vastly different ideas about how to approach the story. So it's really fun to listen to you all. Laura has jumped up to the corner in my screen, so I'm going to go with you next, unless there's somebody else that needs to go earlier rather than later. All right, we'll go ahead and go with you, Laura.
Well, hi, thanks for having us. This is
Yes.
so much fun. Um, yeah, so I guess kind of getting into my first steps of this story and everything. Um, It was actually Elizabeth and I had met and we got together and we were chatting and just having a fantastic conversation. And she mentioned this anthology and the topic. And I think I tripped over myself because I had like 16 different thoughts that that popped up, and then I just like couldn't say anything for a second. I was like, that's fantastic. Um, and then I think I probably started out with I wrote the very beginning of a few different ideas, and a couple of them just petered out real fast. And then this one kept going. I think I wrote the first draft of it in a few hours. I was just really excited. Um, Definitely not the final version, of course, but kind of the bare bones were there, and I let it sit for a while until I kind of interviewed the characters so they could have some interest and some depth and actually, be a fully fleshed out story. But the bones definitely kind of jumped into my head pretty fast.
I love I love that the aspect of writing too about how every it, and I think even for the same writer, like how one prompt just makes you just flow and everything comes together, and how another prompt and you're like squeezing blood from a rock and you still get something eventually, but but sometimes it just goes, and I love that experience is so great. So
Yeah.
would you mind reading the passage that you picked to read to us?
Yes, wonderful. So my story is called Win Big at the Body Shop. The towering, gorgeous man in the sparkly top hat gestured toward the huge machine. An excited, jittering jeer roiled through the shadowed crowd. I couldn't see them. I never could, but I felt knowing eyes on me. They were hungry for something. The claw machine loomed above us, the claw itself obscured by the moonlight. The machine, however, was perfectly visible and full of human body parts. Here before you is the body shop machine. You have 3 tries to get what you most desire, and 1 try to keep what you cherish the most. Huh? For the first try, wait, what did that last part mean? I just, let me finish this, okay? His eye twitched when he said it, and there was a momentary shimmer of green skin and a terrible smell. Then he was back, tall and beautiful and wise. I nodded, trying to keep my stinging words behind my tongue. This is what I wanted. This is what I wanted. For the first turn, you must search for what you want to replace. If you fail, you have 2 more tries. For the second turn, you must do the same. For the third turn, you are free to change your mind and grab whatever catches your fancy. But you must try. Yes, thank you. That's why I'm here. My sharp words had started to leak through. They usually did, and got me into trouble. My mom was always mocking the guy in the apartment next to us for having a septum piercing. Why was I thinking of this now? But I guess I wasn't supposed to say it to his face. That was the 3rd time we'd had to move that year. A horrible, disgusting burp wafted in front of me, and I choked. But the woman in her glittery top hat was just standing there, perfectly composed, and her long, beautiful hair shining in the claw machine's sharp light. Yep, sorry, go ahead. I scratched at my nose in confusion and ignored my heartbeat urging me to get the fuck out. This is what I wanted. On the 4th try, it's the machine's turn. I'm sorry, what cost to this, did you? Not in this economy. Yeah, of course, I brought this. I pulled out the wad of dollar bills and held it out to her, hoping she didn't notice it was practically a damp puddle. What use would we have for money? She asked, fiddling with the long puzzle pendant between her breasts. When I tore my gaze away from the perfectly rounded puzzle piece, I realized that the audience was laughing at me. What do you want? I asked her, staring at how the faces on her floor-length gown were shimmering on and off, mocking me. I felt smaller than ever. But this was what I wanted. What I wanted. This isn't mass production here, darling. We need to maintain our supply. And I'll end there.
Okay, now we got body parts to choose from. I mean, there had to be body parts at some point, so. All right, everyone has been jumping around on my screen a little bit, but I think, Valerie, you haven't gone yet. Is that right? And then Sarah and Beth, you haven't either. Is that right? Okay, let's make sure I'm keeping track of everybody. Valerie, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah, so when Elizabeth first brought this idea up, I remember we were sitting on my porch, like she said, we were drinking some tea, and she was like, I've been thinking about claw machines and I want to write a story. I don't know if it's going to be a collection or just all my stories or an anthology. And I was like, either way, it's going to be really cool. Like that's kind of a cool idea. Like it's narrow enough to, find a story, but expansive enough for people to come up with their own ideas. And then I was like, I've never played a claw machine in my life. I don't know, I just always avoided them. I wouldn't ever be able to come up with a story about a claw machine. And then I was like, I always played the little vending machines next to the claw machine, the little like gumball machines. And then I was like, oh, hey, I have an idea. So that's kind of how this story came about. It's called In This and Every Universe. And I think what you might need to know before I read this part of it is that the main character is at a bar with her husband. She is wanting to buy a plushie or try to win a plushie from the claw machine. And her life is just very disappointing right now. So Maya moves the quarter toward the slot, but before she can drop it in, the emergency exit door near the bathrooms swings open, and a woman barges in, dragging a vending machine bigger than her through the narrow entrance. She's using a dolly and wearing a back brace. Maya rushes to her side to help. Nah, sweetheart, the woman says in a rolling rumble of a voice that reminds Maya of a purring cat. I've been doing this a long time, and while I appreciate the gesture, it's less of a liability for me to do it alone. Maya nests herself against one side of the claw machine to watch the woman set up the new vending machine. She grunts and huffs as she wrestles the bubble-shaped contraption into an empty corner next to the boxy and much larger claw machine. When the woman finally gets the new machine positioned where she wants it, she smacks the plexiglass side with gusto, and the hundreds of plastic balls inside, no bigger than limes, jostle and then settle again. Whatever's inside them sparkles and glints. The woman pulls a red handkerchief from her pocket, and as she wipes her hands, she turns to Maya and tips her head at the claw machine. You ain't gonna find what you need in there. It's been broken for a while now. From the same pocket where she pulled the handkerchief, she now pulls a large roll of yellow tape and wraps it several times around the outside of the claw machine. Bold black letters repeat the same three words, out of order, out of order, out of order. Not a lost cause then, and not a gullible sucker, just a broken set of gears or sprockets or widgets. Maya has no idea what the inner guts of a claw machine look like, but she imagines them as metallic teeth covered in grease and dust, grinding to a halt after years of neglect. She wonders if there's a way to get inside, a key that might open some secret back door so she can grab the stuffed bear and bring it home. The claw machine is broken and already stole one of her quarters, so it only seems fair. And anyway, who is going to miss a bear like that? A bear so small and unassuming. She doesn't know what happened to the one she bought for her first baby. After Greg brought her home from the hospital, he looked for it for days, hoping it would help ease the hollow ache, but she never found it. When Greg found her on the nursery floor, curled into a ball, sobbing over the misplaced toy, he told her not to worry. Everything was replaceable. The woman leaves before Maya can ask about the key. She turns away from the bear and sidles up to the new, smaller vending machine. It takes quarters like the claw machine, but unlike the claw machine, you win something every time. A hard crank of the handle, a clack, clack, clunk. Maya jabs her fingers into the dispenser and scoops out one of the small plastic capsules. The sticker across the glass of the vending machine is a mess of stars and comets and planets in mid-spiral. A smiling cartoon child holds one of the capsules in the palm of her hand, out of which arches a brilliant, shining rainbow. Galaxies, carry the universe in your pocket. Maya lifts her new toy to the flickering bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The goop inside is dark blue and shimmering. She cracks the lid on her pocket universe. The bright scent of jasmine and fresh-cut grass wafts from inside. She inhales, and the floor tilts ever so slightly off its axis. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Sarah, I'm going to jump down to you.
All right. Hi. So Elizabeth just asked me to be part of this, and it was kind of weird because my association with claw machines is all connected to my partner because we used to go to this restaurant, and I don't know how well, it was more like a bar, but they had a claw machine there, and for some reason he was able to win almost every time he played that claw machine. It was weird, right? No, I'm not kidding. I have like a whole container of toys from there. But one night we went in and all the toys were like, like typical, like, stuffed animals. But then there was this one in there. And he won it for me. And I've had it for 24 years now. And so like when she talked about the claw machine, I was like, dude, we got to do this. This is the coolest thing. I love this. So I'll just read the beginning of my piece. And it is called Horizons. What's that? Amir pointed. Where? I asked. There, he jammed his finger toward a bank of defunct video games and broken coin-operated massage chairs. Behind where the shadows met, construction workers had what looked like the world's worst arcade. I didn't see anything, just darkness and machines, the tiled floor, and an empty mall. What? I repeated. Amir grunted in frustration. I liked Amir. As my supervisor, he'd been one of my better bosses. From Syria, he started his security by living through war. He'd been injured by a bomb and as a result walked with a limp, his left leg permanently damaged. He moved in a slightly off-kilter manner towards the storage area. Don't you see that? In the claw machine, over there. Amir, I scratched the cast I'd been fitted with after breaking my arm a week ago. God damn it, the thing itched. Amir, annoyed, walked back to me, grabbed my hand, and physically pulled me to the broken machine. There! What the hell? Inside the glass, a wallet sat perfectly center in the claw machine's now empty prize tank. Isn't that the one your wife got you? He asked. God damn it, Amir. Ha ha, very funny. I rolled my eyes in irritation. This security job had been unbelievably boring, and pranks were one of the only ways that we could pass the hours. For 8 hours each night, we walked up and down the soon-to-be demolished mall. A Sisyphean task. Blah. We were supposed to look for vagrants, criminals, and thieves when all empty shopping malls really had inside were dead dreams, plastic wrappers, and dust. Joking had been the only way to break down the doldrums in the first few weeks, but of late, Amir had been doing it all the time, and the pranks were getting tedious as it became more obvious that the job wasn't going to pick up. I searched his face for a normal, you got me look that usually accompanied these sort of workplace shenanigans, but there was no joyful, puckish glint in his eye this time. Instead, he looked confused, maybe even worried. He put his hands up and shook his head. I didn't do it, I swear. Seriously? He shook his head. Seriously. Whatever. But can I get your key to get it out at least? He shook his head. What do you mean no? Because I don't have a key. Really? Amir nodded. Yeah, why would I have one? Does Smolsky give you a key to the machines? Because he sure as fuck didn't do that for me. I frowned. He was right. A few seconds passed. Somewhere in the bowels of the place, something shifted. It was a small noise. But maybe that's why my arms broke out in goose flesh. You hear that? The noise didn't repeat. Amir wasn't even paying attention, though. Instead, he was running his hand down the glass of the front of the claw machine, staring at my wallet. Amir, come on. You didn't put it in there? Amir shook his head again. No. How would I get it in there without keys, Einstein? Okay, well, let's just get it out. It was much harder to get it out of the machine than we'd anticipated, and I was beginning to think that I'd have to leave it there until we came back for the 10 o'clock shift and could get a key from whoever had one. But finally, Amir managed to pull it through a small slot on the front with a bent wire. This is where the prize was dropped if you could pick it up with the claw, though I knew no one ever won the damn thing. Here it is, he said, and he carefully took the wallet from the wire and put it in my hand. I'm just going to stop there. Sorry.
Y'all are leaving me hanging. I think everybody has sufficiently, every person has sufficiently made me go, oh, and I'll be reading that one, which is kind of the point. But all right, Beth, I think you are our, excuse me, final person. If I have inadvertently left anybody out, I totally apologize. And I think, oh, Wes. Okay. I wasn't sure if Wes was a just watching or a contributor. So yeah. Okay,
And
lovely.
is Elizabeth reading also?
I hope so.
Okay.
Well, I can. I mean,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have prepared words.
Okay, good.
I love your
Yeah, I
words.
forgot to circle back around. I asked the editorial question, but forgot to ask the author question. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and go with Beth next. I'd love to hear how you approached the prompt and then to hear your piece.
Yeah, I was so excited to finally get to work with Elizabeth. We've been writing buddies for a while, but I was very excited to get to contribute to this, but also vaguely terrified because I thought, okay, I guess I'll come up with a claw machine story. I have no idea what that's going to be. Um, I'm not sure how dark I can get. I'm very much not usually writing dark stuff, and we most of Elizabeth's stuff I can't even read because it's too dark for me. So I was very excited when I started reading through these that I was like, okay, cool. I think we caught the vibe. There's a nice balance. I can finish most of these stories and not have nightmares. And I promise that mine has a happy ending. But yeah, I mostly stuck with my original idea when I started wondering about what's in the claw machine and if I could write something from the perspective of whatever or whoever is inside of there waiting for the claw to come down. So this is an excerpt from my story, Create a Chimera. I had felt the soundless screams vibrate downward through us, all the spare parts in the Create a Chimera claw machine in the basement of Chimerit Laboratories. Round after round, we heard the distant cheers on the other side of the glass. The claw descended, cold steel piercing down into the spaces between us, scraping past cryo-frozen fur and feathers. Pincers had squeezed and lifted, choosing a random clump of parts. Goat tail, dog legs, cow face, over and over. Tonight is the annual culling, when the tech bros at their Christmas party upstairs get coked up, stay late, descend to the basement, and slide their company cards to pay for several new chimera. Gladiators for one night, pieced together with lasers and biogel, who never asked for life and must immediately fight to the death. After last year's culling, I was no longer so deeply buried among the other spare parts, disconnected legs that still remembered how to run and crouch but remained frozen, wings that knew how to fly and nothing else, and the occasional head, like me. I'd gone from hearing distant, muffled sounds to hearing Kevin's voice clearly for the first time. He introduced himself, sounding like he gave this little speech every year. He said it's rare to have a real conversation companion again. Mostly, he just tries to communicate, it's over, the scary thing is over, you're safe for now, to severed heads with ancestors that invented fear. Kevin looks just as he described himself. Front half of a mouse with tiny antlers and bumblebee wings, back half of a frog with a spotted puppy's tail, each piece shrunken or grown into proportion to end up with a creature about the size of a guinea pig. He said he was designed as the Create a Chimera machine's mascot, now living a life of mostly leisure and occasionally shepherding us through the horrors in his custom cottagecore terrarium. When I first told him I used to be part of a unicorn, he was surprised. There are many unicorn heads in the Chimeric labs, but only some get to keep their horns as full unicorn heads, ultra rare component. They mostly just get their horns removed, rare component, and then get reused as horse heads, medium common component. Only the defective or unmarketable scraps, ultra common component, get sent here. And while a chartreuse unicorn may blend right in with the rest of the rainbow, a chartreuse nullicorn is just a sickly green horse. That's what I'll leave off for there.
You promised a happy ending, right? Please say yes. I'm like, oh no.
I swear.
I instantly love all these little chimera and I don't want anything bad to happen to them. So I am actually going to jump over to Wes and Elizabeth. If you want to finish us up since you started us off, that would be awesome. Hi, Wes. I'm sorry I didn't know you were there.
Oh,
I
no
mean, I knew you were
apologies.
there, but I wasn't sure if you were doing the thing tonight. So yeah, I'd love to hear what your approach was and then hear your excerpt.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me and having us. I really appreciate it. It was a bit, I was a bit more like Curtis's story. I was brought into it a little bit later. I'm not really, I don't consider myself a writer. I haven't published really much out there, unlike all these lovely, talented folks here. And Elizabeth told me about her conversations that you've heard about previously. And at one point, she was kind of like nudging me, like, yeah, do you have anything that you want to write for this? And at first I was like, no, no, no. But this story got in my head and it just like wouldn't leave. So I needed to write it down. And then I shared it with her and she was kind enough to give it an honest review, give me some feedback, and we ironed it out into what it is today. So it was a little weird, but it was a fun experience. So I'll jump in and just read a really short section of it. To give you a bit of backstory, this is about a lonely kid who's in a new town and he's bored at the mall. And my story is called Purchase Required. The new claw machine was almost cool. Some weird career-related theme, firefighters, nurses, construction workers, all in plastic balls, people of all ages, races, and even heights. They were so detailed with little pieces that made them look authentic. Little cross necklaces, different style watches. One even had an umbrella. Not one looked similar, like painted models made in some cheap factory. The prices were actually decent for how much it cost to play, and one or two could fit on a shelf at least. There were a few collectibles at around the same height. He just needed 75 cents, and he had more than that left over from the cookie. Perfect. His pants pockets had plenty of wrappers and stuff he'd since forgotten about. Right. He tossed the change in his front pocket instead, so he shook the hoodie. 2 coins slid out without issue, but the third got stuck. He impatiently yanked it out and threw all 3 into the slot as quickly as his hands would allow. The satisfying chink of the third quarter landing in the machine lit up the control buttons. Pretty good dopamine rush. So, what should he go for? At first, it was the doctor in the left corner, but after noticing both the mechanic in the back right and the barista a few inches over to their left, he finally lined up a shot. The claw descended into the pit, with Connor's stomach joining it. And despite his best efforts, he couldn't keep his heart rate calm, overeager as usual. It wouldn't pull anything up. He knew it was a scam, but maybe if he lined it up just perfectly, he could get enough grip, he could get lucky. Maybe the claw would just nope. The moment it started coming up, it was obviously a failed attempt. Shocking, he had lost. Now, normally, Connor would have moved on to the next section of the mall before turning home. It was about that time anyway, but something made him put another 3 quarters in. It wasn't like he'd gambled all of his snack money away. This was fine. He could lose $1 and some change for the thrill of, well, nothing. He'd already had it in his hand anyway. Why not? The claw descended again, and the same feeling seized him. But like a retreating tide, not the same levels as before, muted. But this time the claw almost caught the ball he'd aimed for. It even lifted up in the claw to be dropped as the machine rattled, changing from vertical to horizontal movement. Of course. One more time. This was his last quarter anyway, so let's just get this over with. And I will also cliffhanger you.
I feel like this is an evil plot. Thank you all so much. I would love to finish up with Elizabeth, to hear the writer end of it as opposed to the editor end of it. So when you have this idea, you've invited all these people, and now you're gonna approach your story. And you said that you had written like more than one to try to make sure you could fit it in the arc. Did you start writing before you knew there was going to be an arc, or did you kind of wait and see?
Yeah, so I actually the day after Valerie and I like had tea, I went home and wrote the first one, which actually is this one. And then the next day I wrote the second one. And then the next day I wrote an outline for two more. And then I set them all aside. And I was like, okay, well, I should start talking to people and then I'll get back to my own stories. Um, and then as the stories started to come in, I was like, okay, so I'm not going to write those other two because they are very dark. And we have some chosen family stories, which is great, but we do not need my brutality. So we're gonna trash those for now. And we're gonna reel it back. And so I was like, okay, it's one of these two for sure. And one was, like I said, the one I chose was real, real dark. But I was like, okay, when it started to come together is when I pulled back. It's still probably top two in the darkest. But, I can only do so much. The other one is really sweet, and maybe it's almost like too sweet for the collection, which was very outside of my norm. So that was fun to write, but
Yeah,
it's
I have to
like the
admit
outside
that
spectrums.
I think that I can't remember if this was before you had reached out and emailed me, or when you reached out and emailed me, and then I went and looked you up and everything, and I signed up for your newsletter and I got the free story. And the free story that you sent, and I have not finished it because I was like, oh my gosh, this is very unsettling. And so I had no idea what to expect with the anthology.
That's fair. That's super fair. So
The
that's the
writing was
dark story.
fabulous.
That's one of my darker ones.
Yeah.
It's got like a grindhouse feel. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will totally go back to it. Like because the writing's great, but I
Thanks.
was just like, oh wow, is the whole anthology gonna be like this? I don't know if I can get through that. So yeah, it was pretty funny when I was just like, okay. But yeah,
That
no,
was
and
that was
that's
a
what I love
definitely
too.
fair worry. I would
Yeah.
say that's probably top three dark stories I have. I've noticed my work, it's like there will be dark moments in things, but as I've started, like the longer I write, the more I've noticed myself just naturally doing what I'm calling it leveled horror, which is where you can almost skip the dark things. I'm actually almost grouping them into separate chapters so that if you don't want to read like the violent murder, like that's fine, just skip it. And I'll recount any like super, super important things. Um, and then you can just carry on. But also, if you're very into horror, then like definitely read those chapters.
But anyway, I would love to hear your excerpt from this anthology.
Okay, so this is called Bad News, and the the only thing that you really need to know is that the character is discussing her experiences as she is getting to know the dead because she is recognizing that the dead can enter her. The dead's thoughts were mine, their memories as well. I smelled what they smelled. I was wherever they are, whenever they were, lost in their life. Some deaths are so dark, I worried I'd never sleep again. I spent countless hours thinking, worrying, researching. Could I help these people? Tell someone who their killer was? Find their bodies? But I knew some of their cases were solved. The souls just wanted to be heard one last time. So I tried not to touch anything. No matter where I went, no one talked to me if I didn't touch their objects. Most people thought I was a germaphobe. There was no harm in that. I could walk by a graveyard and no one would stroll out and demand I watch their last moments. I could walk on streets I knew were stolen land and no indigenous person would come and share their tales. I did my best to let the dead rest. I thought I was safe. Then I got multiple sclerosis. Early. Very early. Managing one thing, caught by another. The MS was a catalyst of sorts. A clarity came with that, not in body, far from that, in mind. I'm able to get a sense now. Some objects practically scream at me, beg me to touch them. I hate being unable to avoid those. It's like watching my disembodied arm reach out and touch a burner. At Wendell's Bowling, less than a month into my acceptance of color blindness, a lost soul has found her way in. I'm taken aback. So much for knowing what to avoid. I was trying to picture the colors of this claw machine that looks broken, but is still flashing and begging for me to feed it. Was this machine once blue or purple? Were the lights and knobs and accents red or pink or orange? My defenses were down, and she snuck in like a windstorm. I felt her, and now I'm seeing through her eyes. She wears me like a skin, comfortably settling in my damaged nerves. I know her name as if it's mine. Dina. We're running late, only by 5 minutes. Still, Dina is rushing behind the shoe rental counter, happy that no one is watching. I force myself to keep my distance, knowing how easily I can get lost. The world is awash with color that I thought I lost forever. Pins crash against pins. High fives and a woohoo from a tall, well-dressed woman come shortly after. It's another day, another strike. Dina notes that Wendell is not on the floor, so he won't notice her lateness. The balls of her feet already hurt. The flats she's wearing now don't make up for the stilettos she wears on Saturdays and Sundays. Jack rushes in front of Dina, shifting her thoughts. Nope. If I told you once, I told you 1,000 times. No darting in and out of the shoe rental area. Don't care if that way is a throughway through the arcade. His hands fly behind his back and his head drops. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, Sorry, Dina. I know better. It's just nothing. Don't care. Now get. Your daddy sees you running around here like that, and he's liable to smack you something fierce and ban you from being round here after school. She hates that her brother would lay a hand on her nephew, but what can she do? Love Jack and be around as much as possible, that's all. Jack's speed slows to a walk as he heads towards the modest arcade area. 3 women come up to get shoe sizes. Size 7, 8, and 8.5. They're chatting about the 502 killer being caught and how truckers are bad news. Dina can't tell them they got it wrong, but she wants to. Yes, the trucker named Xander Friedman was bad news, but they aren't all. Dina comes from a long line of truckers, and so far there hasn't been a bad apple in the bunch. Her brother is the first to break the mold and do something different. If anything, he's the bad apple. But still, Dina wouldn't call him bad news. Maybe it's a certain kind of person that's bad news. The look in their eye gives it away, not what they do for work. They can drive trucks or teach history at a community college. And it doesn't start then. 3 boys who were bred to be just that kind of bad news that would keep these women glued to the TV walk in, making the point to no one but herself. They make a beeline to the arcade, not for the games, but for Jack. They've come in before, but usually they just glare or snark about missing a split. They've got different intentions in their dark eyes today. Jack, Dina shouts, I need some help over here. The pinnacle of the triangle has a moment of fleeting disappointment across his pug-like face. Doesn't stop him from punching Jack in the side as they pass each other. Jack wraps around his arm around himself as the boys say something. Jack's eyes go wide. Oh, how Dina would slug that kid in the mouth if it was legal to hurt a kid. She's seen him sneak into the pussycat room before, seen the way he watches her from the corner, tucked away in the darkness. Just one crook of the finger and Dina could get him alone. Physical strength means nothing when fear kicks in, though. Losing the upper hand is all too easy then, she thinks, remembering his eyes flashing like the apex predator he so wants to be, like his daddy. Florence! My mother is all but screaming in my ear, tearing Dina from me as I step back from the machine, hands reaching to cover my ears. I turn towards her, blinking away the vivid memory and color. Yes? You go deaf as well as colorblind? She asks, trying to make a joke of what I haven't adjusted to yet. My whole family has been trying that all week. It's been almost a month, Flor. As if it takes no time at all to adjust to a world where most of the colors have been filtered and others have faded like a warm towel. It feels especially painful now, in this moment. Sure, let's go with that. I'm still with Dina, back only a year and a half ago when the 502 killer was caught, wondering what happened to her and why I hadn't heard about it. The predator did something to her, surely. I don't want to see it, but I have to know. What do you want? Grabbing snack, do you want anything? A pretzel. No, I say, for fear of being bothered again. Thank you, though. Did you eat breakfast before we came? Mom asks. She's blonde, but telling her she's gray, and watching thin lines grow deep brings me pleasure. Because the doctor said, okay, okay, I relent, a pretzel. As she saunters away, I place my hands back on the claw machine. Maybe the memory is short. Maybe I can see the rest of Dina's life before Mom returns with the reheated salt-covered bread. Maybe I'll regret this. Maybe I already know what happens next.
And on that note, now we have every single one of them, our cliffhangers. Yay. Thank you so much, all of you. This has been really fun. And I am genuinely, I'm actually genuinely gonna go get a copy because I really do want to know what happens in all these stories. And for all of you who are listening, either watching now or will watch the replay, we do have copies in the store. And we've got a few copies, and if we run out, we will definitely get more. Um, if you enjoyed this panel format, go back and watch the Cozier Cosmic, because it was a similar type of format. We had a lot of authors with us, and they all shared pieces of their work, and we still have those in the store as well. So this was really fun, and we really, really appreciate all of you coming, especially those of you who are in other time zones where it's much later than it is here. I really appreciate it. And all just to let you all know who are watching, if you watch this before this Saturday, the last Saturday in June, we are having a big end of the school year book fair. Vintage, one of the services we have for the community is we do book fairs at schools. And so we obviously get a lot of stock in to do that so we can populate all those fairs, and we obviously would have a little left over. So we are going to pull it all out and have some activities for kids and have some drawings and have an opportunity to win stuff for your school library and just have some fun. So if you are free this Saturday, especially if you have younger people in your life, we'd love to have you stop by between 10 and 5 and join in all the festivities. And yeah, so we hope you can join us for that if you are in the area. And thank you all again so much for joining us. And it was so great to talk to you. Have a really good night.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.